Hi, welcome to the Meaningful Happiness Podcast. I'm Scott Conkright, psychologist and founder of Meaningful Happiness, a platform where you learn about healthy relationships, how they work, and you develop the skills to have a healthier relationship with yourself. I strongly believe that improving your relationship with yourself improves just about everything, well, relationship-wise. If it happens to improve other areas of your life too, that's a wonderful bonus, but I'm going to focus on relationships here. And what I'm going to focus on primarily when it comes to relationships is shame, and the way shame toxifies one's relationship with oneself and with others. Shame has an enormous role in keeping people from forming healthy relationships. Many people live shame-based lives and are in shame-based relationships and are not aware of it at all. The primary reason that most people are unaware of their own shame and the way shame is destroying their relationships is because growing up, most of us have learned at a very early age to be ashamed of our own shame, so we disguise it. The minute shame is felt, it gets turned into depression, anxiety, and often just a numb, dead, empty feeling. As I see it, shame is one of the primary reasons for drug and alcohol abuse and addiction. It plays an enormous role in compulsive sexual behavior, as well as many other compulsive and addictive behaviors. They all work to help the shamed person avoid feeling shame, and paradoxically, contribute to even more shame, as anyone who's gotten drunk knows. The decisions made while messed up on drugs or alcohol are rarely the best ones. They are all too often just cringeworthy. Anger and rage are also effective ways to not feel shame. In some families, the second shame is felt, it gets turned immediately into an attack on the other. The shame goes unrecognized, and the fury at the other person who caused the shame is all that is felt. Shame is redirected and transformed into anger and blame. Shame kills relationships and people. Shame is why people kill themselves for the most part, either deliberately or slowly through drug and alcohol abuse. Shame is everywhere, but very well hidden. I want to change this. I'm going to teach you how to identify shame so that you can start, one, to heal from it, which is something I cover in my relationship workshops, and two, how to manage shame in healthy ways in your relationship with yourself and with others. So what is shame? I'm going to do a short version here because to really understand it requires that you understand affects, which are the biological building blocks of emotions, and drives, which are another set of building blocks for making emotions. But I'm going to cover that in the next podcast episode. You can also go to the Meaningful Happiness YouTube channel and find my video on it as well. First, shame is obviously a negative feeling. We can all agree on that. Shame is something none of us want to feel, and most of the time go out of our way to avoid feeling. But the problem with the word shame is that most people think of it in its extreme form, as in humiliation. Shame means you really screwed up in this case, or really were horrifically embarrassed in front of a lot of people. Think of the movie Carrie, or Will Smith punching Chris Rock at the Oscars, which I believe Will Smith did out of shame. It was shame turned into anger. Humiliation and extreme embarrassment, feeling mortified by something we've done or had done to us, is on the very far end of a very wide continuum of shame. Think of humiliation as a big punch, and the lesser forms of shame as being Chinese water torture. A racial slur, for instance, is a big punch versus 100 microaggressions. Microaggressions, by the way, are a form of stealth shaming. I'm going to use a definition from the founder of affect theory, Sylvan Tompkins. Shame takes place when you're in a good place, when you're enjoying yourself, feeling, for instance, proud about something, having fun, when you're in a positive connection with someone or something, usually an activity. And then all of a sudden, that good feeling gets interrupted. Positive feelings get reduced, but not completely. It's not like there's a good feeling and then it's then a completely bad one. It's one where the fun changes, turns into something else, but you still want that good feeling. It could be something as small or seemingly innocent as somebody not waving back to you, not picking for a team, not recognizing you. You share something with a friend or a loved one that you're really excited about, and they don't share that enthusiasm. Feeling slighted or mightily embarrassed are on the mild end of shame, but they are still shame. They still cause the affect of shame. And again, affects are the biological building blocks of emotions. We all know what the affect of shame looks like because each affect has a body and face reaction that is out of our control. Here are some synonyms of shame: embarrassed, belittled, put down, rejected, flustered, and one that goes completely unnoticed as shame is feeling hurt. Having one's feelings hurt for whatever reason is a shame response. Whatever good connection was going on got interrupted and reduced. I had a friend over the other day, and we're having a great time talking. Then I went into the kitchen and I got us some more wine, and while I was there, he yelled out, "You're such an idiot!" I froze for a second thinking he was talking to me. I was 1/10 of a second away from experiencing the affect of shame, which is when our heads lower, feel momentarily flustered, our shoulders drop, and there's a sad, disappointed look on our face. But then my friend shouted out, "Hey, I wasn't talking about you. Sorry, I was responding to my stupid boss." I'm going to call the biological affect response to shame the slump of shame. When you're working on a difficult problem, say you're doing your taxes, and you've spent way too much trying to figure it out, and you just can't get it right, and you give up, you're likely gonna have the slump of shame. If you're running late and you miss the train or the bus, you'll do the slump of shame. When a friend or loved one cancels plans to go to a concert or some other event, whether there's a good reason or not, you're likely to do the slump of shame. The slump of shame is involuntary. It's a biological reaction, no different than the affects, let's say, of fear or disgust. If you are afraid, you're afraid, and you're going to look afraid. No choice about it. If something disgusts you, the same thing. If you step on a big mound of dog poop with your bare feet, you know what face you're gonna make. Missing the bus, not being able to solve a problem, being canceled on, are all shame-related in the sense that they're a reduction in a real or anticipated positive affect. You wanted to catch the bus, solve the problem, go to a concert. You certainly didn't want to step and poop. Now get this. Your cognitive appraisal of shame is something you learn growing up. Our affects get socialized by our family and our culture, the culture that we grew up in. Immediately after shame is felt, it too often gets turned into a thought or a different emotion. Disappointment is a cognitive appraisal that often softens the blow of shame. But I'm wanting you to think of shame in a different way so you can recognize it more easily. Let's go back to the words I just mentioned above. What they have in common is that they're all words that are about losing connection with someone or some group of people who you still want connection with. We don't feel embarrassed, belittled, rejected by people who don't matter to us. If somebody who I disagree with strongly and I don't care about that person, and who I know is prone to name calling, and that person calls me an idiot, well, as far as I'm concerned, that's just more proof that they're an idiot. Now, if this person does matter, for most of us, people around us, we care about what they think. I might not know anyone in line at the grocery store, but if I accidentally let out a fart while in line, I'm gonna be embarrassed. I was taught, and probably through shame, not to fart in public. My point is, in Tompkins' definition of shame, the positive connection is only partly reduced. You still want that connection that's positive and the admiration or the liking of the person to resume. In intimate relationships, shame comes in a wide variety of flavors. Dismissing or ignoring the other person, not following through on promises, minimizing the feelings of the other, whether positive or negative, putting the other down, and the worst, intentional shaming of the other. But I need to emphasize that shame doesn't always have to be intentioned by the other person. It is felt whenever a positive connection with the other is reduced. Let me give you an example of how shame works in an intimate relationship in a way that usually is not seen as shame. I'm going to invent a couple. Let's call them John and Jane. And they've been waiting for several days for the weekend. They both have busy jobs, and their kids take up most of their evening time. Both John and Jane love each other. They're very, very attracted to each other, and they're very sexual. On the weekdays, they're usually too tired to do anything more than just get into bed and go to sleep. But this weekend, the grandparents are taking the kids. It's time to get it on, and both John and Jane are ready to go. They have a nice dinner, a couple glasses of wine, and it is business time. John looks up at Jane, and she's completely distracted. She is elsewhere. She doesn't have that sexy look or look that says, hey, guess what we're gonna be doing next? Now, this story can go in a number of different directions. There can be all sorts of reasons for Jane's interrupting that connection, but it has been broken, if maybe only temporarily. But John is hurt. He was really looking forward to the evening, and now it looks like he might be spending time alone with his laptop by himself. Depending on how he has learned to handle shame, he might ask Jane if it's all okay, or he might get pissed, or he might get withdrawn, or he might start nursing a fantasy of how Jane doesn't find him attractive anymore. Fortunately for my fictional character, he's been in therapy with me for several years and is quite healthy, lucky for him. He notes his shame and his disappointment, but realizes that it's not likely that Jane has changed her mind voluntarily. She had just mentioned all the naughty things that she wanted to do in bed while they were having dinner. Something must be the matter. And so he asks. She comes back to life. She goes, "What? Whoa, oh, sorry." She goes, "I am so sorry. You know what? I was panicking there for a minute. I can't remember if I put Jason's meds in the backpack. Hey, so let me just call your mom real quickly and confirm. If I didn't, you know what? I'll just drop up by there on my way to the gym in the morning." And she calls, finds out Jason has his meds, takes a sip of her wine, and gets undressed in the kitchen before joining John, who's patiently waiting in the dining room. John is clearly going to enjoy his dessert tonight. Stay tuned for my next podcast, in which I will talk about how emotions are formed from drives and affects. It may not sound very sexy, but actually it is, I promise. Till then, take care.